Well, good morning or good afternoon to everyone. We're glad you could join us for this webinar. Um, my name is Michael Acapinti. Joining me is my good friend and colleague, Dave Davies. We are Senior Gift Planning Advisors for the Wycliffe Foundation. And our roles with the foundation are to help people use their God-given assets to advance his kingdom through asset, charitable gift, and estate planning strategies. I've been working at this work for over 30 years. Used to have a lot of hair when I started. And for the last 3 years, I've been serving with the Wycliffe Foundation, which serves the whole family of Wycliffe. Wycliffe Bible Translators, JARS, Seed Company, SIL, Dallas International University. And joining me, as I said, is my good friend and colleague, Dave Davies. And Dave's going to introduce himself now.
Good morning. It's good to be with so many partners and donors. Today, we're delighted to be able to provide this program. My wife, Charlotte, and I live here in Lee's Summit, Missouri. I've been serving people with biblical charitable gift planning services since 1982 and joined the Wycliffe Foundation 8 years ago. Good to be with you today.
Thanks, David. So as we go through this webinar today, you're going to have questions, and we're going to answer those at the end. Dave and I will take about 15 minutes or so to go through some of this material. But at the bottom of the screen, you should see a Q&A box. And we would just ask, as questions come to mind, that you would type in that Q&A box. And at the end of our presentation, we'll spend a good amount of time just going through those questions and answering them as they come in. So if you see that box at the bottom, Q&A, that's where you want to answer questions as we progress through this. Also, I want to let you all know that this webinar, I like to call them Zoominars, is being recorded. And then in a day or two later, that you'll receive an email with the link to the recording. And if you'd like a PDF of the slides that we're going to go through, we'd be more than happy to get those out to you as well. So we're going to get started here. And as you can see, the title of this presentation is Planning in Light of the Secure Act. That's the short title. The long title is Charitable Strategies for Tax-Wise Planning with a Purpose for Your Heirs and Ministry. So the Secure Act, which was passed in December 2019 and went into effect last year on January 1st, made some significant changes in the tax law as it relates to retirement assets. And those changes, some are good, but some have adverse consequences, which we're going to talk about. So the first change is that it increased from age 72, the RMD, known as the Required Minimum Distribution Requirement. It used to be age 70 and a half, and so they rounded it up, I guess, the way of putting that. But along with, and that gives people more time if they don't really need the income from their retirement assets, they can wait another year and a half. But they also restricted a planning option known as the stretch IRA. And this is an option that many people have in their estate plans or their retirement plans that say, when we pass away, we want that IRA to continue to pay out over the lifetime of our heirs, the children typically, but it doesn't have to be a child. And what that did, hence the word stretch option. And that could be for another 30, 40 years. And so the Congress changed that law and said, no more of that. If you leave that IRA to someone other than your spouse, those heirs must take the distributions in a compressed 10-year time period. There are some exceptions for minor children, disabled heir. We won't get into the technicalities of the law there, but we can answer those questions later. So this created two adverse results. First of all, for your heirs, there is the potential now, because they have to take the income after you pass away in a much more compressed time period. There's a very good possibility they're going to pay higher taxes because there's higher income. It's kind of the way it works, right? And also there's a second adverse result, which we call the too much too soon or the prodigal son scenario, where perhaps there was a very good reason why you wanted to stretch out that IRA to the kids over time, and now they're getting a lot more in a lot shorter time, and that could cause some issues. So we want to address those, and we want to present 2 or 3 charitable solutions that can help you, I'm going to use the word get around in a very positive way, get around the stretch IRA restriction and do something good for the charities you like at the same time. So first, let's talk about the unnecessary tax burden. I just did a little table here. Let's say your heirs are age 60. You can see the blue highlight there. Under the old law, they could take income payments from the IRA after you pass away over 29 years. Now, the Secure Act has shortened that to 10 years. More likely than not, that's going to result in higher taxable payments, which will more than likely push your heirs into a higher tax bracket, which will lead to higher income taxes. And I don't know about you, but my guess is that income tax rates are going up, not going down. At least that's what folks in Washington tell us. Just to see this a bit more from a mathematical perspective, I'm kind of a numbers guy, just again, the same 60-year-old heir. Under the old law, they could take that over 29 years, and I'm assuming $100,000 IRA, they're going to pay $20,000 in taxes. Under the new law, because they have to compress those payments, and assuming it puts them in a higher tax bracket, you can see that the taxes they pay are going to go up substantially, say by a factor of 25% or more. So the question becomes, if you could reduce the tax burden on your heirs and still make those payments to them, by the way, would you be interested? We're going to show you a way that you can still provide to heirs, reduce the tax burdens, and do something good for the charities close to your home. The second adverse consequence, we talked about the prodigal son scenario. That's the old story in the Bible. That's an estate plan gone bad. The kid got too much too soon, and it didn't really turn out well for him, did it? At least not initially. You have the younger generation. They think in their mind, boy, if I get an inheritance, they have in their mind the things they're going to buy, the cars, the boats, the vacations, whatever. Those aren't bad things per se, but not every kid is what we would call a creative spender. But I know when I was a young guy, age 18, I had a lot of hair down to here. I have a picture, me standing next to my uncle Rudolph's red Porsche 911 Carrera in Germany. That car would look pretty good in my driveway if I got a big inheritance. And I was pretty good at money, if you ask my parents. So the point here, and then one other point I'd say, I think Dave mentioned this to me the other day, research shows that people who win the lotto or get a big inheritance all at once, between 3 and 18 months, it is gone. And so the question is, if you could protect your heirs from themselves, still provide for them, but to protect them from themselves, would you be interested? Well, we have a 3 or 4 strategies we'd like to share with you and how you can accomplish that. And Dave's going to take it from here.
Thanks, Michael. There are 2 charitable planning options and opportunities. The first is a outright bequest or designation from your IRA, in most cases coordinated with your estate plan. You can make a outright tax-free distribution to a list of the ministries and charities that you support. Or instead of a list of ministries and charities, you can make the same distribution to your own donor advised fund. The Wycliffe Foundation has a donor advised fund program, and other companies and charities have those as well. It's basically a charitable checking, savings, and legacy account. And in fact, surviving family members can even continue your giving with a donor advised fund. And then 2, a testamentary charitable stretch income plan. Number 1, the charitable remainder trust. There are several different types of charitable remainder trust depending on your situation and objectives. But what remains in your IRA can go to create a charitable remainder trust to provide lifetime income for family, loved ones, for lifetime income payments or over a period of years. Other assets can be added to the charitable remainder trust. and you can name the trustee. With the charitable gift annuity, a ministry or charity has to qualify to offer a charitable gift annuity program. The Wycliffe Foundation has had a great charitable gift annuity opportunity since 1970, and a IRA can be designated to create a charitable gift annuity for surviving loved ones and their spouse as well. It can be for 1 or 2 lifetimes. So with the first solution or opportunity with the outright charitable bequest designated with your IRA, the IRA is the best asset. This tax deferred asset is a tax-wise option for making charitable bequests because the charities or ministries that receive the distribution are tax exempt and will not be required to pay those taxes. You want to leave heirs other assets that are not tax time bombs. For example, your stocks, mutual funds, life insurance, real estate, savings account. These types of assets can be transferred to surviving family members tax-free. IRAs pass tax-free to charity and ministry. They're revocable and changeable during your lifetime. So as the Holy Spirit leads you, you have different objectives that you're not considering now, but may change in the future. It's very easy to change. Effective upon the death of the IRA account holder or survivor, husband and wife. So typically the IRA passes tax-free to the surviving spouse. And then when that spouse passes on to heaven, what remains can go to as an outright bequest. And as I mentioned earlier, instead of a list of charities and ministries that you want to benefit, you can designate your IRA to your own donor advised fund. And then within the donor advised fund, without the need to engage your attorney, you can revise, amend, change the objectives of your donor advised fund as often as the Lord leads you. It's very simple to do via beneficiary designation with your IRA.
Thanks, Dave. Yes, this is definitely a simple way to accomplish your objectives. Now, but let's say that you want to say, no, I want the income to be spread out to my heirs. How can I do that? Well, we're going to talk about, I will talk about 2 scenarios here. One we call the charitable stretch trust. Sometimes folks will call it the prodigal son trust or the give it twice trust. And I kind of like that last one because it really describes how this works. So let's say you say, no, I want that IRA to keep going to my kids, but I'd like to go over their lifetime, not 10 years. Well, I'm going to show you a simple example here. You could create a charitable trust. Let's say your IRA, or really any qualified retirement plan, is worth $500,000. At your passing, it would go into that trust. And then you get to set up the trust terms. They say, hey, I want to pay 5% over the lives of my 2 middle-aged kids here. You know, in this case, it would pay them $25,000 in income over their lifetimes. And if you just do the math, let's say they both live at least 30 years, that's well over the original amount in the $500,000 getting paid to them over their lifetime. So this is a charitable and legal tax-wise way to keep using that plan of stretching your IRA to the lives of your children. It just goes to a charitable trust instead of to them in 10 years. Once they both live out the term of that trust, then the remaining principal goes to the charities that you've named in the trust document. And in essence, as we said, you've given it twice. You've given income to your heirs over their lifetimes. So you've now stretched that IRA out back to greater than 10 years for their lifetimes. And when the Lord calls them home, you've given the remaining principal to the charities you named in your trust document. So it's a wonderful way to accomplish all of your planning objectives, and but with the added benefit of doing something really good for the charities God puts in your heart to include in this trust. By the way, these charitable trusts have been around since, well, they've been doing them for a long time. It was in 1969 that they were officially put into the tax code. So this is not something that we just made up. It's been in the tax code for decades, and a lot of people have taken advantage of that. Dave mentioned there's another charitable life income plan called the gift annuity. Similar again to the charitable remainder trust, but different. And I'll talk about that in a moment. But typically this may be for heirs who are a bit older. Maybe that's that same young couple, but now they're 65 and not 45. The son and daughter, but the same idea. You set up a charitable gift annuity with a charity that sponsors them. Upon your passing, you name the charity as the beneficiary of the IRA or 401k. And then again, it would pay income to these two over their lifetimes. One difference with a gift annuity and a remainder trust, with a remainder trust, you can choose the payout rate. With the gift annuity, the rates are based upon their ages. The younger the heir, the lower the rate. The older the heirs, the higher the rate. And so it really depends on their age when you pass away. Like the remainder trust, when they do pass away, the remaining principal goes to charity. And again, we have the same idea. You've given it twice. You've given the income and stretched the income to the heirs over their lifetime. And then when they pass away, you've given the remaining principal typically to the charity or ministry that sponsors the fund. Again, this is not something new. The first modern charitable gift annuity was done in 1830. And we actually have records going back to the Middle Ages where a man gave his land to the church in exchange for a yearly income. So this is not new. This has been over for 100 years, probably hundreds of years. This annuity idea has been in place. And it wasn't until the early 1920s that it was formalized here in the United States so that all charities use the same rates, basically. Some historical side note there, sorry. But again, the idea is you can give it twice, and you can, again, take this IRA that would have been 10 years, and now you stretch it over their lifetimes. And really, which plan, let me go to the next slide here. There are some good pros and cons for each. With the stretch trust, you have a bit more design flexibility. You can pick the rate. You can choose the term if it's a lifetime, or you can limit it to 20 years. You can name multiple beneficiaries. And the nice thing about the charitable stretch trust, there's potential growth in the income. As the trust grows, the income grows, which provides a bit of an inflation guard for the heirs. On the gift annuity side, they're very easy to set up. And the payments are fixed and stable. Once they're set, they do not change. There are some cons to both. You have to get a trust document drafted. And for the gift annuity, it really depends upon the age. The heirs are under age 55. Many charities won't start payments until age 65. These are things we'd have a conversation with you about, because really which plan best fits you depends upon your unique situation and goals and the members in your family. So, you know, and part of David and my job is to listen to what you want to accomplish and why, and then say, you know, based upon what you discussed with us, we think you should look at the stretch trust, or, you know, I think you can look at the gift annuity. It's a very personalized thing. But in essence, bottom line, both would allow you to avoid this restriction on the 10 years, you know, restriction, and allow you to pay income to heirs over a longer period of time, their lifetimes, and do something good for charity. So this is what Dave and I wanted to cover. We're now going to go to Q&A, and Dave's going to moderate that for us. So as we mentioned before, if you have questions, there is a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. You should be able to see that, and just pop it up, and we'll Dave will read the questions, and then together we'll try to tackle them. So let's look and see if we have questions in the box, Dave.
Yes, Michael, we had one that the question was asked, how do I fully designate my gift to benefit members or missionaries that I'm currently supporting? And those gifts can be, we can help you make that designation through what we call a missionary partnership plan to make sure that all of that gift goes directly to the members or missionaries that you identify. Something that's interesting about that opportunity is it can benefit members even into their retirement. And then, Michael, the second question had to do with a individual that has a 403B, and comparing that to the tax concerns related to an IRA, and they are the same issues, the same concerns.
Yeah, and if I understand the question correctly, yeah, it's the same. Any qualified retirement plan. Sometimes we use IRAs kind of catch them all, but with most qualified retirement plans, be they a IRA, a 401k, or a 403b, which we have, you have the same concerns, and so it works for all qualified retirement plans.
Thanks, Michael. And George asked the question, can I designate the remainder that goes to charity to a specific Bible translation project?
I would say yes. I mean, we want to work with people who do these charitable plans to say, hey, I'd like it to go to this project, this charity, to be used in this area of the world, or even a specific project. We definitely want to honor your wishes, and so we have something called a confidential bequest intention form. We actually have a piece of paper in the file that says, when, in this case, I think you said it was George, when George passes away, he wants this trust remainder interest to be used for this specific designation. So yes, we try to work with the people who do these to honor their request.
Thanks, Michael. And then Pete asked a question, are there options mostly beneficial for funds currently held in IRAs or other pre-tax accounts?
I think we answered that, Dave. Yes. I mean, there may be some quirks in certain of those accounts we'd have to look at, but for the standard fare IRA, 403, 4Bs, they work. And they probably would work for other pre-tax accounts. We'd have to get a bit more detail on what those other accounts may be.
Mm-hmm. And then Nancy asked, when you talk about heirs, that refers to those people mentioned in your will, but not necessarily children or spouse.
Oh, okay. We use heirs in the broader sense, but I see what Nancy is getting at there. The tax law doesn't call heirs related people. It doesn't have to be bloodline. It could be Dave. No, it could be your best friend. I mean, so we use heirs in a broad, generic sense, Nancy. But the law doesn't say it has to be blood relations or step relations. It could be your best friend. So.
Mm-hmm. And then Scott asked, I have a Roth IRA. Would my beneficiaries pay taxes on those disbursements?
As I understand Roth IRAs, they would not. That's why you've probably, Scott, converted that Roth IRA or your IRA to Roth. You paid the taxes when you made the conversion. So that's a really good point, Scott. If you have a Roth IRA, you're not going to face there's no taxation on the disbursements. But I'm going to write a note to look into that one more. But in general, you've paid the taxes when you converted the Roth to a Roth.
That's my understanding as well. And then another individual, anonymous, Could you show these 2 or 3 screens about the Secure Act again? I would just say that we're going to make all of these slides available, and those can be you'll have access to that through a link, or we can send them email attachment. And then Dan asked, Michael, is there a cost to establish a gift annuity?
For Dan, yes. No, just kidding. No, sorry, Dan. No, there's no cost to establish a gift annuity. They're actually very simple document to set up. There may be a cost. No, there wouldn't even be in your trust because you're setting this up outside your trust. The short answer is no. There's no cost to set up a gift annuity.
And then George asked, how much is required to distribute annually from your donor advised fund?
Great question, George. One of the beauties of the donor advised fund, unlike say a private foundation where you must distribute 5% a year or you'll be taxed on it, there is no restrictions, there's no requirements that you make a minimum distribution from a donor advised fund. Now, having said that, studies every year show that for most donor advised funds, people are making grants between 20 and 25% of the value of the fund every year. So people are using them to accomplish their philanthropic goals.
Yes. And then Nancy asked, when would you think of doing a charitable remainder trust or a charitable gift annuity, and for how much with regard to percentage? I would say that really depends on how individual or a couple is led. And that is a distinction between the charitable remainder trust and the charitable gift annuity. Charitable gift annuity values start at $10,000 value. Most charitable remainder trust values, a minimum value would be about $250,000. Would you have something to add to that, Michael?
No, yeah, I mean, for the management of a trust, that's true. And then Nancy, I would add, Nancy, it could depend upon the age of the people you want to make the payment of income to, where trust may be a better option if they're younger. But as Dave said, as we said, it's your own personal situation. We want to look at it a bit more closely and to see what you have and who you want to benefit. And then I suspect, Dave, that the age of the beneficiaries or the people could drive that conversation more, especially if they're younger. Yeah. But Nancy, we can chat with you afterwards more about that.
Yes. Yes, and just another mention on any of these questions or questions that you may have later on. Michael and I are very easy to reach by phone. We can have Zoom, FaceTime visits, and even visit in person as we travel. Michael, Roger asked, if I gave $25,000 in mutual funds in January and $100,000 in cash, how does that fit into the 100?
Hey, Roger. Yeah, I've spoken with Roger. Glad you could join us today, Roger. I actually have an answer for you. I'll be emailing you later today, Roger. Roger's question has to do with for this year, you can deduct up to 100% of your cash contributions to charity. But if you give appreciated assets such as mutual funds, the equation goes down. The short answer is if you give, well, I can't do the math fast enough in my mind, but if you give both appreciated assets and cash, Roger, you can deduct up to 30% of that 100 would be the appreciated assets, and about 50% would be cash. But I'll explain that to you offline on an email, Roger, how that math all works.
And then Michael, Joel asked, what is a scheduled annuity date, and how does it affect our wills and trusts?
A scheduled annuity date. I'm not certain what you mean by that, Joel. If you could send us another Q&A question clarifying scheduled annuity date. If you mean when the annuity starts, we typically would start when you pass away. But if that's not what you mean, just send another question and we'll try to clarify it for you more.
Yes, and then in the example of the testamentary charitable gift annuity, that lifetime income rate for the annuitant is going to be based on their birth date. So Joel also asked, and Michael, with your California history, you may be able how is Prop 19 going to change Prop 13?
Hey, Joel. Hey, when I first voted, when I was in California, I voted for Prop 13 to limit the property taxes. That is a property tax question that's very specific to California. And so perhaps we can talk offline, Joel, more about what you have in mind. But as I understand it, parents can't just pass on real estate, or they've limited how much they can pass on to the kids without the kids having a step up in basis. But that's more a property tax question, Joel. And like I said, I'd probably better talk offline about that one.
Mm-hmm. And William asked, what are the first steps in working with you one-on-one to plan our estate? Can you overview Wycliffe's fee structure for helping someone in setting up an estate plan?
You can tackle that one, Dave. I'm taking a breath.
Well, we are always available to help people with their estate design. Michael and I have a resource that we've both used since the late 80s, and it's gone through a number of revisions. It's a great biblical estate planning and inventory guide with biblical principles there. Everything, it discusses everything that goes into a healthy estate plan and helps you to pray and think through what's appropriate for you, how the Lord's leading you, and come up with a plan that is also tax-wise and are subject today to really maximize the amount you're passing on to loved ones and to the ministries and charities that you're close to. So, so that we do have that service available. It's as easy as contacting us by email or phone to set up a time. And with regard to fee structure, there's no cost. It's a service to people that we're meeting through all of our Wycliffe partner ministries. So anything you can add to that, Michael?
No, I think as Dave said, it's a complimentary and confidential service. We like to say, folks, we want to get you ready before you meet with your attorney, help you think through all the issues and details as much as we can, so that when you meet with your attorney to draft a will or a trust or both, you'll be attorney ready. And that'll save you time and a lot of money, I'm sure.
Anonymous question, Michael. Can we designate a certain percentage of our charitable gift annuity to non-Wycliffe organizations, such as Focus on the Family, Moody Bible Institute, and other ministries that we're close to?
Now, that's a very good question. With the charitable remainder trust, yes. With the gift annuity, most charities who sponsor them, they're the sole beneficiary of that gift annuity. And that's the policy with Wycliffe. Now, having said that, David and I know some Christian community type foundations who offer annuities who would, whose policy allows them to do that. So if you really like to do a charitable gift annuity, but you have more than just Wycliffe Bible or one of our family organizations, we'd be happy to work with you, but then also connect you to a Christian community-like foundation who can help you spread that out.
And I would add clarifying point that within our charitable gift annuity program, individual or a couple can designate any of our Wycliffe partner ministries for any purpose.
Yes.
Let's see here. Yeah, that is, pardon me for a moment while I look for other questions. And Michael, with your master's in tax, this might be a good. What code should a 1099-R be in box 7 for a CGA from an IRA holder when the money went to a charity?
Hey, I see that's from Bruce. Hello, Bruce. Good to see you. You're with us. Bruce, that's one that I don't have that memorized. I used to do my tax returns by hand. Now I need the software too. Bruce, that's one that if you send me an email, I can answer that for you. I'd have to check with our finance department. I just don't know the answer to what boxes checked off on your 1099-R. Wow, thought I was ready for everything. That was a good one.
And then Michael, Brenda asked, if you have time, could you run through a comparison of a donor advised fund and a charitable stretch trust? We're new to these concepts. Yeah.
Well, Brenda, I would say probably we probably don't have time now, but at the last slide you'll see will have contact information for David and I, and that'd be probably the best way is to handle your question after the webinar and just email David or myself. We'll show you a map in a moment. I serve people in the West. David serves people in the East. So that would be the best way to handle that one, Brenda.
And then Joel mentions that they're beginning to take their required minimum distribution and would like to have a conference and meeting with you, Michael. I would say also with regard to that question, some of you may know there's an opportunity now called an IRA qualified charitable distribution. So you can give tax-free from your RMD and even exceed that up to values as high as 100,000. So that's additional information that we didn't mention today, but we certainly can provide supporting information on that if that is of interest. And then Michael, Kenneth asked, is the estate planning and inventory guide an available document? Yes, we can send that in print. And if you like, we can also send it electronically by way of email attachment. We find for most people especially working through that with their spouse, using the paper booklets is helpful.
I agree.
And then Nancy asked, do charitable gift annuities have a special tax benefit in the year they are given or established?
Hey, Nancy. Well, they do. It depends when you set it up. Now, if you set up a gift annuity for yourself personally to receive income, you would receive also an income tax deduction, and part of those payments are tax-free to you. If you set up a gift annuity, like we talked about in our presentation today, for the benefit of heirs, again, that's a broad term, your estate will get a charitable estate tax deduction. Right now, for estate taxes to really be an issue, you have to have at least $5 million of net worth, 11 if you're married. Our current president has talked about lowering that, so we'll see what happens. So really the answer is yes, but it depends when you set up the annuity, and it depends if it's going to be for you or for your estate.
And then George asked, how frequently do you recommend one look at his estate plan for possible modifications? And I would say that we find that people are surprised by life change that happens every 2, 3, 4 years. And we recommend at least every few years taking a look at your documents, making sure that everything's current. And it gives you an opportunity to pray and think through if you're really in your stewardship of your estate, if you're really maximizing the benefit to family, ministry, and charity. And then a well-written estate plan, quite often you can just, if there is a need for a change, you can just amend that plan, revise it with a codicil, and typically pretty easy to accomplish.
I would just add, David, you made a good point there. I would add, if you've had a will or trust have been in place for a while, and if you have retirement assets, often people, David alluded to it when he top up outright gifts. If you have in your current plan IRA assets or qualified retirement assets that are going to the kids, as David said, those are tax time bombs. The kids are going to pay taxes on those. So you may want to look at your estate plans just to see if you have some of these hot assets where it may be better to adjust the assets you give to the family and leave others to charity. But that would just take so yes, that's another idea.
And our colleague Susan is reminding us that there's going to be a link sent to everybody that attended, even those that were not able to attend. So they'll be able to watch this recording again. You'll have access to the slides. And then, Michael, were you going to talk about our territories there?
Yeah, just real quick. One, thank you for joining us today. We had, I think, over almost 60 people at one time, but we hope this has been of assistance to you. Dave and I would welcome the opportunity to answer questions you may have moving forward. As David mentioned earlier, our service is complimentary and it's confidential. And so as we leave here in a moment or two, if you have more questions, and I think a couple of people I spoke with, I said, email me or email David. As you can see, our pictures there. David serves people from his office in Kansas City, Missouri, outside there. I serve people in the West from my home office outside Colorado Springs. We'd love to have the chance to chat with you. And so we'll leave this slide up for a bit. But thank you. We appreciate you spending some time with us this morning or afternoon, as the case may be. Dave, any final comments?
Well, it's a pleasure to have everybody attend today. Just want to mention that the Wycliffe Foundation has been available for a number of decades now, and having people represented from all of our partner ministries really was the initial vision to be able to provide this service for partners, donors, and their advisors and other family members as well. So pleasure to be with you today.